Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Kirby, Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance. But a few things up front here. As always, if you would like to see a written review before, after, or instead of this video review, then you can go ahead and go to www.thegravelpit.net or click on the link in the description to go see my written review. It's totally there. I think it's there. I hope it's there. So you have the options. And, I haven't really been doing these in much of a great order, I guess. But, just so you know that this game, funny little story here is that, this was one of the, I think this was the second Kirby game that I played, after Kirby's Dream Land. And, it was really fun and everything. And I liked it so much that I went onto the Virtual Console, eShop in on the Wii, and I was all excited because hey, here's a Kirby game on the NES that I've never heard of called Kirby's Adventure, and got that, started playing it, and it seemed awfully familiar. And after playing it for a bit, it finally hit me. Oh my God, this is the same thing. So yes, that's the thing where the naming thing is bullshit. Let's just agree up front that it's bullshit. Because how was I supposed to know? I was a kid, man. I was like, I don't know. I'd played fucking 2 Kirby games before. This was another one where it had a wholly different title. It was on the NES, for fuck's sake. How was I to know? And the instruction booklet apparently says, here's the adventure, let the adventure begin, and all this shit. But it never actually directly says it's fucking remake. I'm sorry. Why didn't they do that? But that's for a thing in case you guys had that kind of confusion as well. So I'm talking about this more so than the NES title, which I did play on the Wii Virtual Console, but I'm probably going to focus more on this. So I just wanted you to know where I was coming from and why I decided to view this as the main thing rather than Kirby's Adventure and then mention this. Alright, let's go to the thing. Kirby, Nightmare in Dreamland is, like I said, it was the remake to Kirby's Adventure. And as a slight background to that is that Kirby's Dream Land was the first Kirby game put out on the Game Boy. Don't worry, I will get to a review of that eventually. And Kirby could do things like he could walk, he could jump, he could fly, and he had the ability to inhale enemies and shoot them out and all this. And there were some power-ups here and there, but it was a very linear experience, and those were basically the mechanics you were working with. With lots of catchy music and cutesy designs and some really satisfying sound effects. And then Kirby's Adventure came out on the NES, and it took a lot of those ideas. It was a late one on the NES, so it looked pretty good. They added in a bunch of color in this game. They added in this overworld with multiple levels you could just go into at will, with also some mini games you could do here and there. And they added in what he's now known for is this copy ability, where he can inhale enemies and devour them, and then use their abilities as his own. So, you eat an enemy that can shoot fire, then you can shoot fire. You eat an enemy that can, is using a sword, then you can use a sword. All kinds of stuff. And these were the main innovations that they added to this installment, along with, going around fighting the bosses. Has always been a thing. Mini-bosses and bosses at the ends of these areas and all that. But it was adding a lot more variety to the way you could play, and adding some more character to this Kirby character. And, that's the remake does all that stuff as well, although it does change up a few of the things. One thing is that Kirby can now run by double tapping the direction that you want to run, and I'm not sure if there are more copy abilities or not. There might be. But they've added in, they have all these copy abilities, and, which is, basically, that part's the same, but the mini-games, or sub-games as they're called, are different in this version. There are 3 of them in here, where the one is, similar to one in the first game, but where you're, a samurai, and all these other, enemies from the game come at you in a row. And they're all dressed up like samurai, and you wait for this little exclamation point to show up on screen, And when that shows up, you immediately want to hit the A button to try to, get to the draw faster than them, and then you beat them. And beating enough of them is, you can get extra lives. Depending on how many of them you defeat, that's how many lives, that'll determine how many lives you get. There's another one where you're basically playing with 3 other Kirbys, and you're knocking around you're knocking around a bomb with frying pans. You're knocking it back and forth between each other until only one Kirby is left unexploded from making a mistake. Again, if you get depending on which place you get, it determines the amount of lives you get. And the other mini game is oh gosh, what is it? Oh, the other mini game is I believe it was called Air Grind, where you're on these stars. There's 4 Kirbys again. You're on these stars going across these rails. If you hold the A button, you will grind on the rails and go faster. But there are spiky patches, so if you let go just as the spiky patch gets next to you at the right time, you get a slight boost. And also, if you start grinding again immediately after the spiky patch, like directly after it, you also get a boost. So there's a little bit of risk versus reward thing happening with that. And, you're trying to beat the others to the end of it. These can also be played from the main menu if you just want to play those mini games when you want, but in the main game they give you extra lives depending on your performance. And there's still the overworld, there's still the levels with all the copy abilities, there are still the mini bosses and the bosses. There are these little arenas you can go into where you can fight these mini bosses. And there are set ones depending on which area you're in, as there are multiple areas filled with multiple levels. And each one has its own boss that you can fight, and then get its, copy its ability once it's defeated, as well as get a health refill after you defeat them, which can be nice if you know how to beat a boss really well and just want to get a refill and not lose lives. There are also these museums you can open up, and basically they just have docile enemies sitting there, so you can just copy their abilities without having to put up a fight or go find them in certain levels, which can be very helpful for doing some things, especially things like getting secrets, because there are secrets inside the levels as well here. Instead of just being the straight linear thing like Kirby's Dream Land was, in this game you can actually go around and go back and revisit levels. In a lot of levels there are these shortcuts you have to use certain abilities to get to, and then there will be, these switches, I guess is what they'll be. And sometimes you need, multiple abilities to try to get to it and then, further access it, or sometimes it's a little more simple. But they're usually from some kind of, complicated branching secret path, or some kind of very secretive and well-hidden doorway that you enter, and you can hit these switches to uncover things such as these mini games and the museums and all that within the overworld. Which is kind of a neat way to make you replay these levels and actually explore them a little bit more, and try to get the 100% completion. And why do you want to do that? Well, you want to do that because if you get 100% completion, then unlock extra mode, which means you have basically just have less health. You have half the health of the normal mode. And if you beat it on that mode, you unlock Meta Nightmare, which is the game again, but you play as Meta Knight, who has his own abilities with his sword. He's a lot faster, and he's geared towards speedrunning, because you're supposed to play through the entire game in one sitting, and then your time is recorded, and it's basically trying to get your best time as Meta Knight. So that's some cool stuff. A lot of interesting things put into the game. You also can unlock the boss endurance mode if you beat the game as well, so that's always neat. You can just go into the sub-games and play that. There's even a multiplayer capability to play with someone else, so that's cool also. There are a lot of things put into the game, and of course, with the remake, they have updated visuals. It looks a little more, it uses the capabilities of the Game Boy Advance hardware to make it look better, to make it sound better, and to basically to make it portable. It's on a handheld now, so you have all that stuff on the go, and it's very fun. It's very cutesy. The music is very catchy. It's not too difficult. It's not necessarily easy. It's a bit more difficult than Kirby's Dream Land, but it's not necessarily a hard game either. And it's just the sounds are satisfying whenever you do actions, and the whole game is really just built around the idea of having a nice, fun time, having a fun adventure. And I didn't really mention the story, but it's a pretty basic plot of just that people's or like they can't dream or something. So Kirby has to go through these levels and try to get the Star Rod back from King Dedede and put it back into the Fountain of Dreams so that people can dream again. It's simple, and who cares? It's not really the point. The point is to play the game and have fun. That's kind of the point. So that's why I didn't bring it up. And the game didn't really want to brief me on it either. So that's fine. That's obviously it's not super important because the game would have said so. And I think it's a pretty wonderful experience. But of course there are issues with it. This is not perfect. Like I said, there is multiplayer mode, but you can't really take advantage of that. Most likely, I mean, especially nowadays, because you would need to have, two people would have to have Game Boy Advance. They would have to each have a copy of Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, and you need a Game Boy Advance link cable in order to even do that at all. So that's probably a little bit limiting when it comes to this game. It's kind of neat that you can play the sub games on the side, but they're not something you're going to want to play for hours or anything. You're not going to probably want to dedicate time to those, but they're a nice way to kind of break up the action and get a few extra lives. Just not something you'd want to really do just by themselves, just for the fun of them, even if they are kind of fun in those really quick, short doses. I think some of the secrets are a little bit brutal to find. I had to look, because I played the game a few times before. Like I said, I've had the game for a while, but I had to look up some stuff because I wasn't I wasn't sure where some of those secrets even were, and some of them were fiendishly hidden. And I think also it's a bit steep to ask that you beat the game 100% to unlock extra mode, finding all those secrets, which some of them, like I said, are difficult to find, and then beat it again on extra mode in order to get the Meta Nightmare thing, which is actually different. They want you to play the game basically twice in a row, and then you get this new, more interesting mode as a different character that has different abilities. I don't know. That part kind of miffed me a bit. But I guess really other than those, the only other thing I would say negatively about this game is that I do prefer the 8-bit style of Kirby's Adventure. I think it looks a lot nicer, and I think it sounds cooler. But that's probably just a preference, as I tend to like 8-bit more than 16-bit. And I don't know if this is, I don't think the Game Boy Advance, I don't know if it's technically 16-bit or not, but it has that kind of feel to it, and I don't know, I don't like it quite as much. But again, it's a portable version of it, and it's still incredibly fun. It doesn't really take much away from it to do that. That's just kind of a personal preference thing. So, yeah. Kirby, Nightmare in Dreamland. It's a fun game. If you're a Kirby fan, I would say definitely check this game out. If you don't already have Kirby's Adventure, then yes, you should probably check this one out. I mean, it's probably worth about, $20 or less. I don't know if you'd want to go too much higher for a Kirby game, unless it's very good. And this one's good, but, it's one of those where, you'll play it, it's not super long. You'll probably play it multiple times, because, every once in a while, you'll occasionally probably want to pick it up and play through it again. It's fun to do that. But it's not, it's not a game you're going to be playing for hours and hours on end. So just keep that in mind when you're getting it. It's very fun. I like it a lot. It's fun, and I feel like it's trying to be fun, and it succeeds. And it's nice to have it, on the handheld, on the go. It's really cool. I don't know much else to say. It's fun. And Kirby fans and people who have a Game Boy Advance who want to have a nice fun time that's not too terribly difficult, and if you haven't played Kirby's Adventure, or if you just want to see Kirby's Adventure reinvented for you, it's available here, and I believe this version is also available on the Wii U eShop, which defeats the portability point part of it, whatever, but it doesn't really, I don't think it takes away from it, so, yeah, check it out, and, I guess in the comments, if you want to leave something, which do you prefer, this or the original Kirby's Adventure? I preferred this mostly because it's portable, and I don't know. I feel like it feels a little slightly better gameplay-wise, even if I don't like the aesthetic as much. Also, what was your favorite power-up in the game? What was your favorite copy ability? Mine was the sword. It's awesome. Just using the sword the whole time. Just walking great. So, I hope you guys enjoy the review. Leave things in the place. And I have been Sam, and I've been a real person. And don't forget, you can still go at this point. www.thegravelpit.net or click on the link in the description. And that written review, it's still hanging out there. It's still just chilling. So why don't you go ahead and say, hey,